Hottest paranormal live show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe. Well, greetings, Cardinal Sin Nation. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and welcome to another episode of Into the Fringe, where our guest tonight is Mike Bara, who is a New York Times best-selling author, lecturer, and TV personality whose books have sold over 100,000 copies worldwide. He began his writing career after spending more than 25 years as an engineering designer / consultant for major aerospace companies. Mike's first book, Dark Mission: The Secret History of NASA, was a New York Times bestseller from Feral House in 2007. Mike has made numerous public appearances lecturing on the subjects of space science, NASA, physics, UFOs, and the link between science and spirit, and has been a featured guest on radio programs like Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. He is a regular contributor to the television program Ancient Aliens, America's Book of Secrets, and Hangar One. Mike has also starred in an alien invasion reality show for Discovery Networks called Uncovering Aliens and Truth Behind the Moon Landing for the Science Channel. In 2022, he appeared in the Fox Nation documentary Denver Airport, Hidden in Plain Sight. And I would like to welcome back my friend, Mike Bara. Barra, I apologize. Mike Barra. You're still muted.
It's Bara, not Barra.
It is Bara. Okay,
yeah,
my
okay.
bad.
All right,
I heard somebody else pronounce it on a show, and I thought, oh no, I've mispronounced his name. And so
no. It looks like Bar. There are worse things in life than to have your name remind people of Bar.
People mispronounce my last name all the time. So.
Yeah, it's Bavel, right? Go Bavel?
It's Bavel.
Bavel. Okay.
It's a long story.
Right, well, see.
And please, Gary and Doomcock, please unmute yourselves because I do have a couple of things to say to you guys. While folks are rolling in, I'd like to introduce once again my famous co-hosts who need no introduction and frankly have no business being on a channel as unimportant as reprobate as mine. Overlord, Dictor Van Doomcock, and Gary Ambrosia.
Hail everyone, how you doing? I'm honored to be here with you, Cardinal Sin and Mike Bara, and of course, my regular pop culture pundit, Gary Ambrosia. It's an honor. These are some amazing books that we're about to talk about, and it's just a thrill. You have pretty much convinced me of some things I did not know about before, Mike, and you've kind of opened my mind to Mars in a way that I did not think of it before. So well done, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Oh, Lord and Overlord Master of the Universe, Doomcock. But you're welcome.
At least the future ruler of Earth, anyway.
Future ruler of Earth, at a minimum. Yeah.
Well, the Earth first, then the universe.
That's right. Why stop at the Earth? It's such a small little speck out here in this cosmic ocean. Thanks. And that was the intent. It's just my intent is to create stuff that anybody with an open mind, once they get through all the information, say, these people aren't crazy. This guy's not nuts, and there's something going on there that we should dig deeper into, because I think our history is completely different than what we've been told, including our recent history. So I saw that I saw that you followed me on Twitter, which I really appreciate, but I hope I don't piss you off because sooner or later I piss everybody off one way.
No, I am not a very sensitive wilting flower. I do not get other people having contrary opinions or anything. I don't understand all these sensitive Nellies out there that get offended so easily, but I don't want to take up any more time. But I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you, kind sirs, for being here. I know Doomcock, that you and Gary are really in it for the deep dive, drill down into the truth of the mystery of Mars, of Ares, the war planet, the red planet, the angry red planet. Have you guys seen that?
I have not seen Angry Red Planet, although I've seen the poster with the strange spider creature. But no, I have. That's one of those B movies I have not thus far seen. I know.
Well, it's no B movie. Trust me, it is. The Angry Red Planet is a classic.
It's an awesome
you
movie.
Have to watch. I mean, you have to get Doomcock. You have to. You have to do it.
You
tonight.
sent me Devil Girl from Mars, right? Gil?
I sent you Devil Girl from Mars, which is also a really, really good movie.
Right, but not Angry Red Planet. So
No.
I don't.
What? I
I'll
have to send you everything?
Well, no, but I'm just saying, it's like if it was required viewing, then you should have said.
By the way, before we get into
fun,
the show, I wanted to show the previous commemorative T-shirt that we made. And before we get into too much, I want to share the new commemorative shirt, which is on gillstore.org. I can't share that one. That's the wrong one.
Boy, I was going infinitely,
Yes.
into a realm beyond imagination. A land that we call the Cardinal Sin Store.
Okay, so when you go to gillstore.org, you've got all these fancy Into the Fringe things, but we have new additions today. We have this wonderful shirt that is a commemorative shirt, just like the one that we have that I'm wearing, but this one, of course, is with our new design, thanks to our good friend Vet for Hire, and it has the date on the back.
That very festive date,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very important, very important. So when you go to gillstore.org, not .com, I had to change that recently. You'll find all kinds of commemorative goodies and stuff like that. But the new shirt for tonight's show is up.
you should put something else on the back with that date. It should say Maldek blowing up and roasting Mars.
Well, maybe I'll get a little MP3, like a card, and you can sing that. And when you open the card, it'll say that.
That singing voice is. I bet you're really fun at karaoke, Doomcock.
Oh, hell yeah.
If you wear the helmet, the Mandalorian helmet.
Oh, yeah. If you want me to put on the helmet, I can put on the helmet. It's up to you guys.
Actually, when you put on the helmet, Doomcock, it scares me so much.
Is that what your last girlfriend said?
Your commanding voice is because I'm wearing headphones. It's all I can hear, and it just shoots me up with adrenaline. Mike, I wanted to say at the outset that I think as a best-selling author, you really showed some backbone in preserving the original cricket draw graphics the way they were in the original pictures. Very responsible journalism. You do impress me, sir.
Well, you have to do that because otherwise people will say, oh, this doesn't exist and you're photoshopping it, which is laughable because my Photoshop skills are absolutely laughable. They're terrible. So,
well, you know enough to tell the debunkers that they're full of shit.
Well, yeah, I think most people that, all you have to do is look at the way they argue to know that they're full of shit. But it helps to to just have everything at the ready and say, oh yeah, what about this? What about this? Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer. Here you go. So it's just one of those kinds of things that you just have to be ready. And that's why you put all that. That's why actually writing nonfiction is exhausting, whereas writing fiction is so much more fun. I've got a couple of. By the way, if anybody out there is a literary agent or knows one, I'm looking for one for my fiction. and it's more fun because it's just a novel, right? You don't have to go to all the detail of where exactly did I find this. I mean, I've got this one set of images I'm going to show you that a guy named Neville Thompson discovered that are new on Mars. That it's like it's a city. I mean, it's a freak. I call it Vatican City on Mars. It's relatively new, and it's indisputable what it is. But if you can't give them the frame number to go and say, okay, go here, go to these coordinates, prove me wrong, prove me true to me that it's not there on the NASA data. If you can't do that, you don't have a very strong argument. So
yeah,
for all that.
And just for a sec, I'm going to turn on the room light so that Doomcock can see Forbidden Planet.
Oh,
up here and down here. I don't know if you can tell, because my UFO might be in the way, but
that's me. That's me.
There
right
you go.
there.
That's where you are.
Picture I sent you.
Yeah.
For you are a legionnaire, Minister of Infinite Affairs. Well done.
I also wanted to mention,
absolutely,
and just really thank you so much for your generosity, Mike. Tonight, we're giving away not only a copy of Ancient Aliens on Mars, but a separate giveaway of Ancient Aliens on Mars 2. So that's very generous of you. Thank you very much for that.
Hey, no problem. Did I actually give those to you?
No, I bought these. These are my personal copies.
Well, then I will make sure that these two get set out.
Whoever, the yokels that are the lucky winners will have to get their own copies. But I do thank you for
Bill. That's like $4 out of my pocket that I'm not going to get for selling those.
Well, the really smart thing about giving one away to one person and giving the other to another person is that you'll make a sale for each of those so they can get the set.
There you go. All right.
So, and I do want to remind people to stick around until the end of the show to win an autographed copy of Mike's Mars books. There will be 2 lucky winners tonight. You must be present in the chat to be eligible to win. And of course, while you're here, please do subscribe, hit that like button, the notification button, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now that we've got all that out of the way, I do want to mention that this interview, which is more of a casual conversation, really is covering 2 books, which each deserve their own 4-hour show, which we simply can't cover in one night. So there are going to be a lot of questions. Plus, we just want to hang out, sort of bask in each other's glory. And we'll get to some questions from the chat in the second hour.
Next time we'll have to just stream live from some bar in Vegas somewhere.
Dude, I'm there. Let's do it.
That sounds fun.
Let's do it that way.
Stream from the old Little Alien or something like that,
There you go. I know that you've got some history with the Little Alien.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And even though I'm having some fun with Mike and these guys, because I know they like to have fun, we do need to get down to the importance of the capital T truth, which is serious business, because this is a search for the truth. We end up where the science and the evidence takes us. And if someone reaches conclusions that don't meet with those of the mainstream, that's because sometimes at the heart of the mainstream lies a conspiracy. So let's dig in. First of all, Mike, I have to say your writing style is tight, man. Big fan.
Thank
you. From 3 writers to another, you communicate and entertain at the same time. I really dig your vibe.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's, I just write like I talk. It just kind of comes to me. Like the word I'll just be typing and I'll not know the next word and then it'll pop into my head and I just keep going. And it's
the introduction was great because your snarky, salacious sarcasm was just chewing up the furniture. It was great.
Really? I don't remember that. I'll have to go back and reread that.
Oh, it's so good. It's got so much snark.
Look, when you have them by the gonads, right? Go ahead and squeeze.
That's right.
Why go to all that trouble if you're not going to squeeze, right?
People should know you have your own YouTube channel. You are a real carnival barker on your YouTube channel. You're very loquacious and you have a real feel for how to work the room, even if there is no room.
Well, honestly, Cardinal Sin Gil. I have
Yes.
I don't really have I have YouTube channels. I have Mike Bara 3, I have Mike Bara 333, I have Mike Bara 2, but that's disabled. I used to have Mike Bara Official, which had a lot of subscribers, but that's all been taken away from me. So most of what I do, I don't publish there. I publish it. It's more on Rumble, on Real News Live.
And of course, you have your website.
And I have my website and stuff and everything. You can go to the website and catch all the videos that I'm doing. And I do have a show that's more conspiratorial and political than it is scientific and alien.
I was going to mention something a lot of people don't know is one thing that you and Doomcock shares, that you both have shows called Friday Night Frolics.
Well, I stole it from him because it was such a great title. Because here's the thing, I was doing a Saturday show, and I apologize, Doomcock, but it's like my audience is minuscule compared to yours on Friday Night Frolics. It was such a great title. I just thought, well, you can't copyright a title, so I'm going to steal it. But what it was is I was doing a separate Saturday stream with Dr. Brooks Agnew, just because you can. Dr. Brooks Agnew and Candace Whitelight and a friend of mine, Blake Wally, who's kind of a reporter in the Tennessee area. And I just got to the thing where I wanted my weekends off, right? Because when you're doing conspiracies about what's really happening on the planet and, all the stuff that aliens are behind and all that, it's really exhausting emotionally. And I said, look, so I'm going to move it to Friday. So I did. So I'm like, well, what are we going to call it? Well, I'll just borrow this name for like 5 minutes until we can.
At least you didn't call it Friday Night Tights.
That's true. I did. I should have. I got it. But look, if anybody can come up with a better title, that's fine. But I think I've got Friday Night Havoc. That's good. Tippy Tail McKitty. I kind of like that. Friday Night Havoc.
That's
maybe
not bad.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
But
we're not here to talk about politics or religion. The viewers pay us our shekels to talk about ancient aliens on Mars, and maybe not so ancient, right?
Well, not so ancient, and who knows how. And the thing is, though, is that all these things end up overlapping. You really don't want them to, but they do in many ways, because the arguments about what's on Mars, it's a political argument. The debate I'm in with NASA is not about science. If it was the science, we would have won the argument a long time ago.
Right.
They're spinning politically to try to keep people from believing in the truth of what's on the red planet. That's the reality of it. So then I have to spin back and fight back. So it's kind of always, a political fisticuffs thing. And then there's the really weird stuff. There's the really weird stuff. And can I share my screen and just show you some weird stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's
see it.
Let's rock and roll.
Let me do a screen share here. Yeah. Share screen. Let me go to
and hello to everyone in the chat. There are so many of you making so many comments. I can't really say everyone individually, but glad you're here.
Well, first of all, Doomcock, this is Angry Red Planet.
Wow.
It as a 8-year-old, the first time I saw this, it scared the living shit out of me, and continues to scare the living shit out of me. But the thing is, this idea that there was life on Mars, of course, there's always been this fanciful speculation. But way back in the early 20th century, Marconi said, I saw some flashes on Mars, something out of a Wells novel, and I think I'm getting messages. So did Tesla said he thought he got some messages from Mars. So they came up with this thing, which was this National Night of Radio Silence. Now, there weren't very many radio stations throughout the country or throughout the world at that time, but they said, look, everybody, shut them down. So on August 22nd, 1924, when Mars was in opposition, its closest approach to Earth for, the 2-year Martian period, because it's got a very elliptical orbit. We want everybody to shut down, and we're going to listen. And we're going to set up some balloons, and we're going to listen. And these two guys came up with what they called the Jenkins radio camera, which is that if they heard any pulses or signals, they were going to somehow convert those into images. And so this became like the first Xerox machine ever in 1924, the Jenkins radio camera.
And this is the National Radio Silence Day, right?
National Day of Radio Silence or something like that. Yeah.
And this is stunning. In your book, it was absolutely stunning.
And then it gets weird because this is what they got, and the signals were recorded by the Jenkins radio camera. I'm sorry about the quality of this image, but this is the best that's available on the internet right now. Yale University Library has the original, but it's never been scanned in high resolution. And this is the best that I've been able to obtain. from 5 p.m. August 23rd, 1924, from 1 to 5. And we got this image over and over and over again. And people said, well, if you convert that and flip it, it's weird. It kind of looks like a human face. And from the side in profile, it kind of vaguely does look like a human face.
Now, we're still on Angry Red Planet. Do you need to move to a different image?
Oh, yeah. No, we should be on a different image.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike,
yeah,
that's
like,
pretty
well,
ballsy.
that
It
doesn't
looks
look
like a bug from Angry
that's
Red
pretty
Planet.
pretty hard evidence right there that we are not alone here.
So it's not changing. Okay, let me get out. Can you see you can see it now, right?
I just see the red.
There
I
we
mean,
go.
you gotta, now we see Marconi sure Mars flashes messages. Which,
Okay. All right. So then this weird face thing came out of this is the Jenkins radio camera, and
look at that.
this is this weird face thing that came out, and it kind of looked vaguely like a human face. And
This was actually the very first face on Mars, right?
Face on Mars in 1924 in profile. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, this weirds the fuck out of me because it looks like this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, how is this a coincidence? How is this?
Is that Ray Fiennes?
Yeah. Did the guys who made the movies know about this and think, oh, that's a great image, we're going to make Voldemort look like that? Or does Voldemort look like that for a reason?
Or is it just a coincidence?
Is it just there's no coincidence.
There's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah, there's no coincidence.
Well, I'll tell you, that face in profile looks exactly like the face on Mars to me.
Well, except the face on Mars is a direct on view. It's a completely different.
Well, sure, but I mean, in profile,
Depending
I
on
think it would look very much
angle.
like that.
Yeah. And there's pyramids and stuff on Mars, and maybe I can share some of that stuff. There's these pyramids. Like, okay, so this is. Hang on, I'm going to show it.
That was bizarre, though, that it was a repeating face that was made by this imaging technology.
And it was it was regular pulses come, and then people are like, well, it was somebody's washing machine.
Now, hey, Mike, there's a series of images there. Are they the same repeated image, or is there an animation?
Every 30 seconds. Yeah,
it's the same repeated facial profile image. She's actually more attractive than I am in profile.
Which means it's not a random piece of signal.
No.
It was over and over and over.
Repetition of the same exact image.
This was on August 21st, 1924.
So the very first image, from Mars that we theoretically received was a face, although it wasn't the face the way we came to know it later in the 1970s. But then, there's some other really weird stuff that. Let me see if I can just.
And I just want to make it clear to the audience that is why they wanted a National Radio Out Day, so that there would not be any. There would be much less chance of interference, polluting this alleged signal, which these scientific geniuses were convinced were coming from Mars.
Right. Exactly. And then okay, so like you guys can see the pyramid here. Right?
No, you're not sharing the screen anymore.
Oh, here. That's my bad. I was trying to get my Star Wars thing to light up.
I was. There we go.
That's a pyramid.
So that's a pyramid. And the interesting thing is that's a pyramid, but that's in China. Okay. China has pyramids. And then this is a pyramid on Mars. There's no question about it. This comes from NASA.
Yep.
And you look at them, and if you look at them side by side, it's a partial image, but
it's not a naturally occurring,
No, because look
artifact.
at this. Look at how this side. See how it slumps in a little bit there, and it slumps. It's the same way here.
And Mars is lousy with pyramids,
right? And when you overlay them, they're exactly the same except for the scale. And we know that this one is artificial. So why is this?
Did you hear they just found a pyramid somewhere else, like 2 days ago? Oh, and another question I wanted to ask you, Mike, just to see if it has any bearing on your research. Mainstream science reported recently that Mars turns out to be a lot more volcanically active than we thought before.
Right.
Before they said, it's been a dead planet for millions and millions of years. All of a sudden, they've seen a plume from a volcano that's the length of the United States side to side.
Yeah, which is as they say, kind of big. And look, again, the model that I have that Richard Hoagland has, because Richard is still with us last time I checked. What channel am I on? The channel is Into the Fringe. It's the Into the Fringe podcast, Dave Bara.
It's not a podcast. I don't have an RSS feed. It's just a YouTube show.
Into the Fringe. My brother wants to watch.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's like it was Mars in that model, in our model, is actually a moon of a planet, Maldak or Phaeton or whatever name you want to give it. Planet V, as Dr. Tom Van Flandern called it. That was what they call a super Earth, which is basically about twice the size of Earth, but about 5 times as massive, which we see in all these other exoplanets, other solar systems that we study, but we don't see any here. Well, about where they would be is the orbit of Mars, where Mars is currently, and where the asteroid belt is. And all we see in the asteroid belt, of course, is a bunch of rocks, which implies that possibly there once were these planets, but they exploded or were made to explode.
Mike, nobody talks about the EPH, and I think you got it right. I think that you can give us a lesson about the exploding planet hypothesis and how it shows that Pluto is an escape moon of Neptune, Mercury is an escape moon of Venus, Ceres is a remnant moon of Phaeton, and Mars is a remnant moon of Maldak, etc. Can you break it down for us?
It's not easy to do, but it's actually Dr. Tom Van Flandern's theory, the late Dr. Tom Van Flandern. He passed away about 10 or 12 years ago. Brilliant scientist, head of the U.S. Naval Observatory at one point for celestial mechanics. Anyway, as he pointed out, there was something called Bode's Law, which is that every planet is about twice as far from the sun as the previous planet. And that actually holds true all the way up to Neptune. But then when you get to Uranus, it's off. But also, if you notice Uranus, it's tilted over on its side. Something hit it and knocked it off of its rocker and out of that sequence. So it really does hold, except that there's no planet where the asteroid belt is, but there's an asteroid belt, which implies it is exploded. And, Mars orbit is a little bit off, but Mars, I think, and Dr. Tom thought, was just a moon of this super Earth that exploded. And there are natural models through which you can have natural nuclear reactions, which can make planets explode, which is a scary thing considering all of us, last time I checked, lived on a planet. And then you can also, you also have, there could have been a war. And then there's a lot of cultural stuff that is connected to people inside NASA, like Dr. von Braun, that implies that there was some sort of war. So whatever the cause is, Mars was a habitable moon of this super Earth that exploded and wiped out, ripped off half the atmosphere, spattered one side with so many craters you can't even count them. And then the other side was all scoured from the oceans that then were released and just basically scoured the surface of the planet. And then it looks like somebody still lived there for a while afterwards, as long as they could.
What I think is really interesting in the first Ancient Aliens on Mars book is that you mentioned that Mars has 38% the mass of Earth, and in Mars 1 you assert that it was a quote warm, wet, and hospitable close quote environment, and it was the moon of another planet or 2 other planets. What happened to the planet Mars that Mars was a moon of? And can you briefly explain for us the solar fission theory of planetary formation?
Yeah, well, the thing about Bode's law that makes a lot of sense is it fits with the solar fission theory, which is right. NASA's model for planets is accretion, right? Where basically you get a clump of dust that sort of starts to glue itself together somehow, and then it collects more dust, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it starts sort of like a big vacuum cleaner vacuuming things out, and eventually it creates enough energy that it starts to spin, and then it sucks up more and more stuff, and then it becomes a planet, right? And if there are these big massive collisions, somehow they manage to glue themselves together rather than split each other apart, even though they hit at 43,000 miles per hour. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, because for one thing, planets would be at all angles to the plane of the ecliptic, which is kind of the belly button of the sun, right? Whereas if you look at the planets themselves, they're all in the plane of the ecliptic as if they were spun off of the sun itself, which to me makes a lot more sense in a molten state, and then spun outward, cooled down, and became planets, the planets that we know today, starting with the gas giants. And again, if you go through Dr. Van Flanderen's book, which is called Dark Matter, Missing Planets, and New Comets by Dr. Tom Van Flanderen, Flandern. It's all in there and very detailed stuff. And then they would spin moons off. And it's interesting because in his model, Earth would have a moon about the size of our moon. Venus would have a moon about the size of Mercury. And the outer planets, the gas giants, would have all these smaller moons, 9, 10, 11 of them. So it all has to do with spin energy and momentum, and basically says that spin energy is what drives everything.
Like, and this is the torsion physics that Richard talked about.
Right. This is the hyperdimensional physics that Richard Hoagland talked about, that I talked about in my book, The Choice, and we talked about in Dark Mission, which is the most successful book we've had. And I covered a little bit in the Mars books. But basically what that means is that, okay, so Mars was a moon and it was habitable. It had an atmosphere. It was a very comfortable place. And then something happened. There was this explosion, this devastation of Maldek that wiped out the civilization there, and you can see the remnants. It almost looks like, as you look at this stuff, it looks like after the cataclysm that there were still people living there. There were still people trying to survive, and then I just think things got worse and worse and worse, and they couldn't stay there anymore, so they had to come somewhere else. Gee, I wonder where they went.
Maybe we are the aliens.
It could be.
Well,
it's possible.
It's pretty interesting that when you're on Earth, your circadian rhythm, right, your body clock is 24 hours. Like our day is 24 hours.
And the Martian day is how long?
24.9 hours. And you know what happens when you're at the International Space Station? Your biorhythm, your body clock shifts to 24.9 hours, almost as if your DNA is tuned more to Mars' rotational period than it is to Earth's, outside of the influence of Earth's gravity and gravitational and magnetic fields, and the other fields we probably don't really know or understand. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to look at human beings. You look at us, if we evolved completely on this planet, why do we have to wear sunglasses outside? Like, Gil, you're wearing sunglasses right now. I mean, why do we have to wear sunglasses? Why do we get sunburn? Because our skin is more adapted to what the climate on Mars would have been like than it is to the climate on Earth. So there's just all kinds of little things that, as individual points of evidence, don't mean anything. But when you put them together in the context of maybe we came from Mars, it just goes bam, 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 bam down the list. So,
man,
wow,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, I had to ask you that question, Gary, about the frames, because that was an interesting question.
Oh yeah, hey Mike, I was wondering if you were able to separate the repeated frames of the signal image of the face, and if you were able to animate them and see what it looks like.
No, I wasn't able to do any animation. The only thing I do have is it just
repeated every 30 seconds, right?
It repeated, but I did take one. Let me go back to it.
Over a period of how long did it repeat every 30 seconds?
About 4 hours until they stopped listening, basically.
And this was on the National Radio Silence Day.
Yeah. So
and
the best.
How many of those images are actually recorded?
It looks. Let me count them. Let me go back because they're actually on the frame here. Let me go back and once again share this screen.
And this was because Tesla, Marconi, and others seem to think that radio signals of a massive wavelength were emanating from Mars, which has now been attributed to pulsars.
Well, they say that's their excuse. They don't know that.
Well, Mike, if you send me that image, maybe I can animate it and send it to you at some point. I'd like to take a look at that.
But that Francis Jenkins radio camera is very interesting.
Yeah. So there's a couple dozen of them here. It looks like repeating the same pattern over and over again. And if you take it and rotate it, it looks like this. If you flip it, it looks like that. I didn't really do a very good job of this one. I darkened the area. So this is sort of the chin, and this would be the mouth and the nose area and the eye socket.
You used Photoshop. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, to make a point. So,
But that is interesting. And, if it was a pulsar, then I would assume it would still be doing the same signal.
And you would be able to find it in the same place, and you can't. So that's nonsense. So that's
Right.
easily
Right.
so. And you know they're not really sure that. And why would it make that pattern? That pattern's a signal. Okay, it's not.
Yeah.
A pulsar is just going to go boom, boom, boom. I mean, literally in microseconds, bam, 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 like that, like a series of bullets. It shouldn't make an organized pattern like that, for sure.
Well, I just can't believe they figured that out. I mean, who would have thought to go ahead and let's go ahead and make a visual representation of this signal. I mean, that's
and why didn't they
bizarre.
allow it to get, out to the public?
Well, it did appear in some newspapers, but nobody knew what to make of it at the time, and nobody took it real seriously. And the other thing, and it was pretty much forgotten. But the other thing is that, why did they think to do this, Doomcock? Why did they want to do this? And the answer is a lot of these guys were Freemasons. And they knew there was life on Mars, or that there had been life on Mars. And I think what they were listening for was, automated machinery and stuff that might be pumping out a signal that they suspected was there. And this was kind of a confirmation. So a lot of these guys, and I don't have proof that Jenkins and the other guy were Masons, but I haven't looked either, honestly, because at one point I just stopped paying attention to that, because I came to a conclusion that, look, there's so many of these Masonic connections to space and the space program that it's like I don't even really bother confirming it anymore. I just assume that these guys knew something. And that's probably because this information is very, very ancient that was passed down through the generations by the secret societies.
But, as a fiction writer, I mean, you're a fiction writer. I've also written fiction. And I think
all four of us are fiction writers.
Yeah. And I think it's a useful skill, because then I always put things through that filter of trying to say, well, if I was writing this story, why would we have this signal beaming? Why do we have this face on Mars that very, very much in profile, I imagine, resembles that picture?
It does.
And so why are they doing this? Is it an automated signal? Is it some kind of homing beacon to remind people of their origins? What is the source?
Doomcock, you have stimulated my mind. There is okay, so it's interesting that you bring up the fact that this Voldemort sort of image would look like the face on Mars in profile, because, and I don't remember if I put it in either one of the books, there was a poster that my brother Dave found on a wall at Boeing in the late 90s, when the first Bush was trying to get an impetus behind a new Mars program, right? And so they made these posters for this national Go Back to Mars program. And on the poster, it showed ruins. Damn it, I don't have it in the book. I don't think I have it in the slideshow either. It showed ruins, and behind the ruins was what was clearly the face on Mars from the side. And it did look exactly like that. That's another connection you just made for me.
It's the first thing that jumped out. I mean, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, so I didn't really, but I was like, well, Jesus, that's exactly the face on Mars in profile. Lack of a nose, the shape of the brow, the eye. I mean, it really seemed like that to me. And it seems like an assertion or a declaration. They wanted to communicate this data to us. But I don't think they're still around, or if they are, they're underground. But I mean, if they were, they'd probably just come on their own. I'm intrigued by it, and it was real. I was stunned when I saw that. I was like, my God, I had no idea.
That's a connection I had not made, and I'm now going to make it with a little Doomcock symbol up in the corner when I present the slide, because that is a connection I had not made. You're right, and that does make sense, and it goes back to this. There is this religious aspect. Mount Voldemort, somebody says. That's what we should call the face on Mars, Mount Voldemort. There is a connection, because I think that the part of the religious aspect of it, and remember, ultimately, the Freemasons and the SS who were working inside NASA, and the black magicians out at JPL, Crowley and all those guys, they were all they all had religious beliefs, and part of the religion is that you have to give people the information. You can't lie to them. You have to put it out there. You don't have to acknowledge that it's real. You don't have to acknowledge that it's right. You just put it out there, and let them see it. And it's up to them to decide what they think about it. So that's part of the free will thing. It's like, well, so when they answer to their God, whoever it is, you know,
to whatever gods you pray to,
whatever gods you pray to, when they answer to their God, they're like, well, we told them, we gave him the pictures of the face on Mars. It's not our fault they couldn't figure out it was artificial, or that they didn't want to believe it was artificial. That's how it works. And so that's why you put all these little cultural memes into the various different media. So
Padre from the chat says former SS, which reminds me, Nazi schmatzi, says Werner von Braun.
Yeah,
that's right. But the face is eroded. I mean, clearly eroded and damaged, but nevertheless, it is definitely evocative of that image. So if you ever mentioned it, give me a plug in I'd be honored if I was mentioned in a Mike Bara book. I'd be honored. That would be so cool.
I will give you a plug.
Like, wow, that's super cool.
Because I mean, when I looked at it, I saw Voldemort. I didn't think about that. What is the side view of the face? And the thing is, I know that that's there because I have this poster somewhere that my brother found. He grabbed the poster off the wall, stole it from Boeing, and gave it to me. And I've got it, printed out in super high resolution. And you're right, it does look exactly like the face on Mars from the side because they painted it. They have all these. They've got these two NASA astronauts crawling up this hill to these ruins, and then behind them is the face on Mars from the side.
Oh,
so
man. They knew.
They knew.
They already knew.
Something else to mention also is the fact that it looks like Voldemort. Okay, that's kind of coincidental. I know you say there are no coincidences, Mike, but even more importantly,
but
it
looks a lot 80 years after that.
It
happened.
looks a lot like a lot of creatures from other planets, life forms from other planets that people have described over the years.
Right. Don't look
besides Voldemort, hell, it looks like the side of a gray, some kind of
a little bit,
ET or something. It has the appearance of that kind of the flat face and the almond-shaped eye type. It's a really rough image, but it does resemble a being like that. So that's something to think about too.
I agree with you 100%. And having just spent a weekend with Whitley Strieber a couple months ago.
Oh, wow, man.
That should have been in my.
that was in the same room or on the show?
Well, yeah, no, we were at a conference together in Manchester, England. We spoke.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's my first chance to really spend hours talking to him. And let me tell you a quick story on this one, right? Sure. So we're staying at this hotel where these guys put on this event, and I did some recordings with Richard Doty and Steve Maris and people there for their podcast. Yeah, Doty's cool, actually. And so my first night there, I'm sleeping away, and of course you have jet lag and everything, right? 3 a.m, I feel like I get
Richard Doty's cool as long as you're not Paul Benowitz.
Yeah, well, Benowitz. He has some things to say about Benowitz that I think might be true. But I get this shove, and I was like, woke up. But it's like, when you're sleeping, you have starts, like you jump and stuff, right? No big deal. I look at my phone, 3 a.m. Okay, 3 o'clock in the morning exactly. That's kind of weird to go back to sleep. Next day I'm at breakfast, Strieber's there, we're talking. And he says, yeah, every night I commune with the visitors. I go, what? He goes, yeah, I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I meditate and try to bring them in and communicate with them. And a lot of times I get messages and I'm like, really, what room are you staying in? And it was the room right next to mine.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Like literally over the wall. And I'm like, tell your friends to stay out of my ass.
Jeez.
Oh,
wow.
Great. That's terrible. That's terrible to make fun of that experience.
No, but that's amazing.
Yeah. And it freaked me out a little bit. And I'll just tell you this about him. He is unquestionably an extremely sincere person. And he's not BSing about anything that happened to him.
He's doing his best as a guy that happened to be a really good fiction writer, a guy that knew how to, stick words together in a pleasant way, trying to communicate to the best of his ability what actually happened to him. And as he's grown older through the years, the experiences haven't changed, but the way that he looks at them and understands them has changed from holy fuck, what the shit is this, to daily or weekly contact. And I did some, Facebook messaging with him, and he said some things like, when I asked him about the cabin in upstate New York,
Right.
he said, I think they have an underground base there. And I asked him some questions about, where he lived in Texas, and the whole thing. It's a lifetime of experiences that's evolved, and with a lot of experiencers or abductees, whatever you want to call them, that tends to be the case.
Yeah, but Gary, your point is very well taken. Very well taken. Okay, so you talk about coincidences on Mars, right? And the Voldemort thing might be a coincidence. You guys want to see something really weird, like weirder?
Hell yeah!
But I guarantee.
What is this? The Twilight Zone movie?
I guarantee you don't have it.
You want to see something really scary?
Well, yeah, it is a little bit like
I
that.
do.
Let me, because I just want to put this out there, because this is some guy, and I forget his name. God, I'm so sorry, pal. I always forget your name. Slid this under my door at the Conscious Life Expo in LA one year. And,
I remember that. Yeah.
And it's a real image. I've gone and I've downloaded the file, and I found it on this image of Mars. It is a real thing, and it is just like so weird that I can't. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What the fuck is that? I mean,
Space
seriously, what the fuck is this right here? This, I'll tell you what this is.
That's a fae. It's one of the fae folk.
It's a 65-foot tall stone statue of an air guitar playing cat.
That's what it looks like.
And it's on Mars. There's no question that it's on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Wow.
It's real. Like, what the hell is that? And who the hell builds that? And the thing is, there's nothing.
And who the hell wedged it up against that big foot?
Well, there's this alcove that they like carved an alcove out for it. It's like a statue. There's his little arm, his other little arm, his guitar, his cat head. Mars is weird.
Well, yeah, when I've looked at that, I'm thinking pyramids. I'm thinking Egyptian god, which is thematically in keeping with that kind of motif. And it makes sense that maybe it only survived because it was in an alcove. It's very interesting.
Canadian Spider-Man says it's a statue of Jennifer Lawrence.
Well, of course.
Everything's Jennifer
She was
Lawrence.
first on Mars, period.
Yeah, she was the first person on Mars.
She blew up the super Earth and, destroyed the Martian atmosphere, all because she had a bad day, had a bad call with her agent. Anyway.
Now, Mike, this actually seems to make a lot of sense to me in light of, the layout of the extrasolar planets that we found since these books were published. Can you tell me what is the message of Cydonia?
Well, this is something Hoagland figured out when he wrote the Monuments of Mars. Yeah, briefly. Basically, what he did was he sent these images of the face on Mars and the area around it. There's an area called the City. There's a big 5-sided pyramid called the D&M Pyramid, which I can show you some images of, which are quite extraordinary, and all this other stuff. And he basically ran it past a guy named Errol Torren. Now, Errol Torren is an American who worked for the Defense Mapping Agency at the time, which is now part of DARPA, I think. And his job 40 hours a week is to look at satellite imagery and determine what's artificial and camouflaged and what's a natural structure.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, all of these things are artificial. These are pyramids. This is another big pyramid. This is a face. This is, all this stuff was completely artificial. And then he said, there's also an internal mathematics to this big 5-sided pentagonal pyramid, the D&M pyramid. And that mathematics, by the way, it repeats itself around all of these other artificial objects. And he looked at everything around it and he said, no, the rest of the terrain around this place is not artificial. All this stuff is artificial. It's a complex like Teotihuacan or Giza. It's a complex of artificial structures. And there was a mathematics embedded in that. And it had to do with spin energies and tetrahedrons. And so the message was basically, if you want free energy, look at the mathematics and physics of tetrahedrons. And so that's what they did. and it had to do with if you spin something massive enough, you're going to get energy that's going to basically erupt at this magical latitude of 19.5 degrees, roughly, and it's because that there is a higher physics operating. That physics is hyperdimensional. In other words, there are higher dimensions, and when stuff leaks through, it displays itself as energy at this particular latitude and longitude, and then they found that repeated itself on the gas giants. It repeated itself on Earth. You know, the Mauna Kea volcano is 19.5 degrees. The Jupiter's Great Red Spot is 19.5 degrees. They predicted there'd be a great red spot, dark spot on Neptune at 19.5, which there was. So they made predictions based on this, and basically saying that if you take something and spin it, you will be able to eventually open up doorways to higher dimensions, which, among other things, guys, proves that you have a soul. Because if there are higher dimensions, then you must have a higher self, and there must be some place for your electromagnetic energy to go when you pass on to the next dimension. Because once you prove there's one higher dimension, you've proven that there is some place to go after this is all over, this experience, because everything moves upward. Gil, you're muted.
Thank you. Even mainstream science understands, that there are 13, levels to this universe, and we have a multiverse, and they're infinite, and blah blah blah. Right. But what I'm curious about is, what is the real story of the face on Mars, and what in it, in your opinion, have people, even planetary astronomers, gotten fundamentally wrong?
Okay. Why would a non-humanoid civilization build a human-looking face on the surface of Mars? And I think the message is that it's trying to tell us is that we're related to them, or that we came from there, or that we came from there and are related to them. And that humanity has existed far beyond just this version of the human race on the planet Earth. So people like to say that, Neil Armstrong, well, he made a mistake. He said that's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, and that doesn't make any sense. It should be one small step for a man and one giant leap. But that's not what he said. I mean, you can go listen. They're saying, well, we think that there was a little signal loss. There was no signal loss. He said exactly what he meant to say. And by the way, he was not a Freemason, but Buzz Aldrin was, 32nd degree Scottish Rite, took a Masonic flag with him to the moon, performed a Masonic ceremony in the lunar module before
also apparently took communion before they left.
Communion is actually a Masonic ceremony. It's actually it predates that. It's a Masonic ceremony dedicated to the gods of ancient Egypt, specifically Isis and Osiris. So,
Gary, you're our resident 33rd degree Freemason. What can you tell us about that?
32nd.
Oh, I'm sorry. The 33rd degree doesn't exist.
I've never experienced any communion situation in any of the lodges. That's interesting. I've never heard of
Scottish Rite, Blue Lodge, right?
Everything.
Yeah. Well,
Shriner.
Where it comes from, there's a great book called The Hiram Key by the author's names escape me, and they basically track the origins of Freemasonry back to ancient Egypt, and specifically the story of Isis, Osiris, and Horus and Seth. And there was an ancient Egyptian ceremony which later was adopted by the Catholic Church as their communion ceremony, which involved chalices and wafers and the pouring of wine as an honorific to Osiris, not to Jesus. So when Buzz Aldrin says, I performed a communion ceremony,
I grew up in a Jewish household. When we went to services on Friday night, pouring of the wine was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you too, also, Catholics and Freemasons generally do not get along as far as history.
That's what Dark Mission says.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really mix that well, but I don't know. That's always been my experience.
So, we traced all this stuff back through a lot of scholarly works to that was true. I don't know what that has to do with the face on Mars. How did we get there? But
it's a free range discussion.
Yeah,
but we're talking about the ceremony that Buzz Aldrin had performed when he landed on the moon,
right?
Before they left on the surface.
So I think that the face is basically, saying to people, look here. And then there's this mathematical message which says, okay, here's the secret to free energy, which is the secret to all the secret space program stuff. UFOs, how do they perform? How do they defy gravity? Unlimited energies, that kind of thing.
In Dark Mission, it was Masons, magicians, and what?
I'm sorry.
Masons, magicians, and Nazis, and yeah.
And you can trace the origins of Crowley and the what we call the magicians out at JPL. Walter Bosley, cool guy, very cool guy.
Very cool guy.
And you can trace all their belief systems, the Freemasons, the Nazis, the magicians, it's all the same. It's all the story of Isis, Osiris, and Horus and Seth, who they believe, I think, were extraterrestrials who came from somewhere else, like, I don't know, maybe Mars, and came to Earth, and they think they can trace their bloodlines all the way back to those bloodlines. And
this actually kind of goes back to Walter Bosley's theory about the Tuatha, or the Tuatha De Danann, as they say in Ireland, that they sort of come from this broken civilization that was more advanced than we are, and they brought the gifts of civilization to all these, hunter-gatherer communities around the world.
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, if you were, the Bible talks about the Anunnaki as like giants, and everybody thinks, oh, there's real giants. And you got Michael Tellinger with his 27-foot tall footprint, in the rock, and all that stuff, which that I do think is a coincidence. How big would they have to be giants? Shack size?
15 feet,
players,
14
football?
feet.
I mean, because the Neanderthals were like, what, 4 feet 10? So of course they
Right.
would appear to be giants.
They
right?
were pretty chunky, yeah.
And then they mate with human females. So if they were 18 feet tall, how the hell are you going to mate with a human female? You couldn't do that.
It'd have to be
A
the
lot
other
of
way
booze.
around, really.
A lot
Very
of booze.
carefully.
A lot of
Very
booze,
carefully, yeah.
a lot of booze, a lot of Astroglide might get it done, but I don't think
agree.
so. I don't think so, Doomcock. So, so I think they had to be closer in size and stature to us, and I think it's pretty obvious to me that they mixed their DNA with the DNA of the Neanderthals and created something like us, which is an
Homo
adaptation.
sapiens.
Homo sapiens sapien, exactly.
Yeah.
We shall make man in our own image. By the way, it doesn't say I shall make man in my own image. It says we shall make man in our own image.
Well,
So it's
getting back to the face on Mars and the signal, my brain's been kind of working on it as a, fictional hypothesis. What you mentioned earlier about how I found it very poignant, thinking about this lost civilization and how this world was a beautiful world at one point, and very wet and warm and habitable, and it's such a tragedy that this catastrophic event happened. And I'm thinking, what if that was an automatic beacon? What if the face is meant to basically signal something? And it goes back to what you said about religion, because you said that the Masons have it that they need to get the truth out, that it's a religious tenet to basically get the truth out. And what if they knew they were dying? What if they knew that they were doomed? And as a religious rite of sorts, they wanted to get the truth out there to survive through the ages.
Yep.
And so that beacon might be religious in nature, that face might be religious in nature, and it might be evidence of a linkage between their civilization and their refugees that somehow maybe made it to Earth at some point.
Exactly. And it's kind of, as you put it, it's an elegant plan. It's an elegant, thought process, is that we're dying. And here's the sense too. We don't know what their religion was like. And we don't know about other civilizations. What if the purity of your DNA is a really important thing in the galactic community? What if it's considered a real tragedy? Oh, Martians, who are a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger than humans, are going to die. The only way we can survive is to mix our blood with theirs and create this. So we're part of the family, but we're not, maybe not as good as them. It's kind of the theme of Prometheus, really. If you look at the engineer at the end, you know, who got all pissed off at the artificial life form, David, and tore him apart, and, you know, was all pissed off at the humans for making him and stuff. It's like a pollution of the bloodline. And again, if you look at all of these different secret societies, they all have this focus on the bloodline. And the message of all this stuff is that you're not alone, that there's more of us, and come find us. Because, you know, maybe we were here once and we're going to leave behind the proof to you that we were here, but you're going to have to come find us, because we're not here on Mars anymore. And that's interesting too, Doomcock, because when they did thermal infrared imaging of Cydonia, the area where the face is, I mean, what we saw was an entire buried city underneath it, like literally out of Forbidden Planet, out of that poster there, Gil, on your
the crow,
literally out of there. And I can show you some of those pictures. And we went through a whole stealthy Mission Impossible kind of game with NASA and JPL over getting those images and processing them. And that's all in the book. Let me show you. Let me get to those images.
Sure.
I mean, there's a whole city under there. God. And let me go back to the slide sorter. And it began to look like, well, maybe there's ice there, you know, that maybe that this is water ice that froze. Here's the thermal infrared images that were processed by Keith Laney, did a brilliant job. This is the D&M pyramid. This is the face, and there's this weird pattern. And as he processed it more and more, what he found was this. This is the so-called fortress, sort of a tetrahedral ruin. And then underneath it, which you don't see it on the surface, you see these buildings and these structures. Look at this thing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know,
look at that.
It's a building, and there's like tubes and things that look like tunnels or trains, and they go to and from stuff. And you know, here's a real close up of that image, and that's like a 10-story tall building, and it's apparently underground because you don't see it on the surface. Here, I compared it to this building I know about in Minneapolis. I used to live there.
Hey, Mike. So these images are taken from an actual thermal camera?
Thermal infrared imager on the NASA Themis instrument. And here's what the fuckers did. Here's what the fuckers did. They knew that they came into our message board. At the time, there was just message boards, and they found this guy Keith Laney, who they knew was smart, and they started feeding him information and they told him, well, go download this image. You're gonna really like it. And so Keith did. And then we found out later, because of the Internet Archive, that 10 minutes after he downloaded the image, they replaced it with another one. So the image on the right is the one that Keith got, which is eventually he processed into this, into this one. This image is the one that they uploaded, where you can go through all the steps that Keith went through, and you'll never get to this. You'll never get this. So they tried to set us up, but we were smarter than them and screwed them over. Wow. So, again, it's like, processed by Keith, processed by using the NASA imagery. You just can't get there from here. So there was all kinds of skullduggery going on around that. And I know it's kind of hard to see because you lose a lot of resolution, just going across the streaming and stuff. But, this is a cityscape. And this isn't on the surface. This is a triangular ruin called the Fortress. This is all underneath. And like this, there's like a train or a tunnel or something that goes right to there.
This doesn't happen naturally.
No, there's like
so this thermal image is picking up grids of city blocks and squares and
underneath the ground. And it's all underneath the ground.
And is this the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter? Or
no, this was from Themis, which was on the Mars Odyssey 2001. Right. Yeah, Mars Odyssey 2001. So and here's the funny thing. We caught him with the Internet Archive, and after we caught him and I embarrassed them at a NASA event that they all attended in 2003 at JPL, they stopped archiving any of their images on there. So we went back, and we could go back and find that they had changed the image. And I mean, there's extraordinary stuff.
Wow, man, that is so cool.
This is like multiple layers 3 or 4 different images layered over the top, and you can see the eye socket, and you can see this grid pattern.
Especially with your 3D glasses on.
Yeah, well, it's even better. And so you take all these different images. You take these different images. Let me see if I can find the other one. Here's the so-called D&M pyramid, by the way. Which is
and by the way, I was going to ask you, can you take us in, help us meet Vince DiPietro and what the importance of his new analysis of the Viking face is?
Vince DiPietro was a contractor that worked at NASA back in the 1970s, and he's the one who did the initial work on the face on Mars and said, I think this thing might be artificial. And he actually invented processes that are now commonly used in Photoshop.
That's the cat box image, right?
Yeah, that's part of the cat box image. There's so many images now. By the way, I want you to look at this grid pattern here on the right side of the face, and let me go back up.
And that's under the face?
That's on the face. Well, you can actually see it because when you get to Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and you look at that area, and again, you have to look at different instruments with different resolutions. Here's another Themis image. That's the same area.
I've seen
and you can see this is all structure, right? And it's not digital artifacting, because it's going against the grain of the image, which is vertical. And then you get in here and you can see the spars and things. Here's vertical spars. There's this area here. This thing is as big as like a 20,000 seat sports arena that looks like it collapsed. I mean, here's the roof. Here's the support structure. I don't know how clear this comes through, but again, the comparison to me is pretty obvious. That stuff that's going 90 degrees to itself, those spars, that's all artificial. That's engineering.
Mike, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that in the second hour, we were going to take a few questions from the chat. So the Equalizer asks, if Mars was inhabited, colonized, visited, why did the inhabitants, visitors leave to not or seldom return?
Well, I think it's because it became really difficult to live there. I mean, you can't grow anything. Look, assuming they're telling us the truth, right? You can't really grow anything there. Although I got some pictures here of some rocks with moss on them. But the atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, which is good if you're a plant, actually.
Yeah.
You can't really grow anything there. It looks like the civilization, moved underground. Like, again, the Krell in Forbidden Planet. But I think the people that were there just couldn't continue to survive. The other thing, too, is if you tear away half the atmosphere or more than half, the protection against radiation is going to go away. So you're going to die if you're exposed on the surface too long. Also, most people don't know the first 3 feet of the Martian biosphere, it gets in the summertime, it gets up to like 65 degrees. You could lay there in your shirt sleeves, you get a massive sunburn, and with a little oxygen.
And you wouldn't have any oxygen to breathe.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get your CPAP machine,
Yeah, that's right.
But you could live there, but it's really difficult to grow anything there. And why stay there? Right. Why stay there on this ruined planet when you've got a perfectly good garden spot, 9 months away by conventional transportation? And so the model is that Venus was once like Earth. Earth is like Earth, and Mars was once like Earth. So you had an inner Earth, an outer Earth, and a middle Earth. The only one left is this one, the middle Earth. And I do not use that term, middle Earth. I use that consciously. So,
because the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings extended cut DVDs are awesome, and this bullshit on Amazon, we're not even going to talk about that. Now, Mike, you and Richard Hoagland have been attacked for your research by debunkers aplenty. I'm not even going to mention Phil, the bad astronomer plate. Oh, shit. There, I've just done it. Okay, since the cat's out of the bag.
I shredded Phil plenty of times. So
why is it that we shouldn't pay attention to that nitwit? Is it because he's way past a skeptic? He's a debunker, a paid shill?
Okay. I'm a skeptic. Gary is a skeptic, as he's demonstrated.
Yeah.
Doomcock is a skeptic.
Sure.
You're a skeptic because you guys ask questions, and until those questions get answered, you don't come to a conclusion. That's skepticism, right? Debunkers,
proper science.
Proper science. Debunkers are people who have taken a specific side and will do and say anything to keep people from believing the other side. They're the people that will tell you, oh yeah, you know, it's these guys are using Photoshop. The reason you have this pattern is because they're JPEGs, right? Remember that the pattern I just showed you, the city blocks and everything? Plate claimed that was because they were JPEGs. We only posted JPEGs because we wanted people to be able to browse them. He had the original TIFFs. They're lossless TIFFs. Okay, so they came from, and he knew that. So he lied about that when he said that. He knew that they were lossless TIFFs. So then you become a debunker. And when you are a debunker, your purpose is to lie, cheat, and steal, and do anything you can to keep people from listening to the other side. It's, oh no, yeah, sure, go ahead and take that shot. That's don't worry about it.
It's like what Stanton Friedman said, never mind the evidence, attack the people. If you can't attack the evidence, attack the people.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing you can't say about me is that I'm making a whole bunch of money off this. You can't say that. There are a few people in our business making some money, and their names are David Wilcock and Eric Von Daniken. So that's
well, it. I mean, you are a best-selling writer.
Well, it comes in, you know, I mean, that's great, and it lasts for as long.
It ebbs and flows.
It ebbs and flows. I mean, the thing about doing TV, and the thing about, which is great, and especially reality shows and writing books, is that you can make really good money doing it for a short period of time. But once that's over, you're not getting paid anymore. So, you know, it's like, oh, okay, how long is this? Because don't just because you're on TV doesn't mean you're making a ton of money, a shit ton of money. But there are some people that are doing pretty well. Did you guys see
It doesn't hurt.
Did you guys see the Corey Good?
Oh God,
Corey Good testimony?
No.
David Wilcock made $4.5 million or something like that, between $4 and $5 million on his classes. I'm like, I got to write some classes.
Yeah, that guy is such a charlatan.
No,
I have a question or a hypothesis. You said that you know, that they built those cities underground. I'm thinking about the sequence of this thing, and it seems unlikely to me that they. It seems to me unlikely that after this cataclysm that they would have survived or had the resources to move underground and construct stuff. I wonder, maybe like the city was buried subsequently, and that's why there's sparse shit on the surface, because, you know, they knew they were a dying civilization, and they went up there to make the face, to make the pyramids, to transmit that information that they wanted to get across, or maybe on their way out, you know, because I mean, it's much sparser on the surface and still damaged. I don't know. I mean, it's just a thought. What do you think about that?
It makes sense, and there is a model where you could have had like the Cydonia city that's underneath the. I think it's under the ice. I don't think it's under solid ground, where everything where the water trickled in and slowly froze as the planet got colder and colder. That's one model. So
and,
it preserved
they have lava tubes on Mars and caverns.
So it's
and
like
stuff.
there was this city there, and there were these taller structures, and everything filled up to what's now the base of the taller structure slowly. But what happened to Mars is pretty catastrophic in most places. At least on the surface, you can tell that there's catastrophic destruction. So that's possible, and you know, something that's certainly been thought over. It's also possible that, okay, you know, I don't want to go here, but let's say that this destruction of Planet V was not natural. Maybe, you know, I'm not gonna talk about Trisha Helfer here, but maybe there was a war between, let's say, machines that were mining that big super Earth or something and providing for the people that were living on Mars, the Anunnaki or whatever they might have called themselves. And they had to destroy that planet. If they did have to destroy it, then they would know that it was coming, so they would be preparing for it. So then, like you say, Doomcock, they would be building underground or built. You know, the thing is that given what we think we know about the Themis instrument, I don't see how it could see that deeply through solid dirt, solid dirt and soil. It almost has to be a sheet of ice, which means that it may have filled in rather not catastrophically like a giant flood, but a little bit at a time. It slowly filled up and froze over. So I don't know.
That's weird. Or I mean, maybe it's still intact now. I mean, there's no way to know, but do you think that there's still actual occupants on Mars, or have they abandoned the base?
So it's a thermal infrared imager, Themis, right? That means it's detecting heat. That means whatever you see in those images is warm. In order to have warmth, you have to have energy. So the answer is, yeah, the lights have to still be on.
And don't forget, as we just found out, the planet still has a great deal of volcanism going on in its interior. So there's geothermal energy on Mars.
Right.
So, so again, and that's because, Gil, what happened could have happened 200,000 years ago. It doesn't have to have happened billions of years ago or millions of years ago. So
I was going to ask you.
Well, when they tell you something happened billions of years ago, it's all based on crater counts, right?
I was going to ask you about
wait a minute.
Ingo Swann.
But if this planet exploded next to Mars, then the crater counts are all fucked up because all those craters could have been made last week or 100 years ago. So the crater counts are useless in terms of the timing of when this happened. We don't know when it happened, but I suspect it was around the same time as the dinosaurs and.
I was going to ask you about Ingo Swann, the remote viewer, probably the greatest remote viewer that ever lived. And he was tasked, I think, by the NSA they gave him coordinates to remote view, and he ended up on in a base on the backside of the moon, and he said that he saw aliens that looked humanoid and that they could see him, and then his handler said, "Stop remote viewing, end the session." And then Ingo Swann said, "They're looking right at me," and his handler said, "Stop fucking remote viewing." So my question is, do you give any credence to that? And this was supposedly 1 million years ago. That was part of the protocols.
Could be 1 million years ago. I have a remote viewing friend, Jennifer Faladorian, that I do a show with on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays about other things. The same thing happened to her when she went to the moon, and she saw the mantis type aliens, and she was like, scared the shit out of me, so I got out of there.
Yeah.
I think remote viewing is a skill. I mean, her accuracy is at least 80%. So that's way beyond chance. So it's a real skill. It's a real thing. Walter's complaining about whether Ingo was the greatest remote viewer.
Okay, arguably
one of the best. One of the best known for sure.
Viewer,
one of the best known for sure. So yeah, I think that I could believe that story. Sure. I know some other people that have those skills that have had similar experiences. But all this happened a long time ago, and it just got very little to do with the truth of today, which is where we've got to get past this bullshit that this stuff's not really there, because what NASA wants to convince you and the government wants to convince you is, you're just seeing things. It's not really there. It's like, Jesus, I'm an engineer, dudes. I know engineering when I see it. I know support structure when I see it. And stop BSing me. We want all.
Okay, so two quick questions, just briefly. Can you tell us about the chain of evidence of the NASA photographs and what's so important about that anyway? And if possible, can you give us a brief overview of the actual history of our solar system?
Wow. In 25 words or less, can I give you a brief history of the
in 40 minutes or less.
Okay. Well, the chain of custody with images is very important, but it's more important with the moon stuff than it is with Mars, because the moon photographs that are online right now, if you had an original 8x10 glossy print from the 1960s, which a lot of people do have somewhere, buried under the stairs in a photo album from Grandpa when he worked on the moon program, they're different. The ones that are under the stairs that are the originals that are based on the original negatives are going to show all kinds of artificial stuff. Pyramids.
Is it true that back in the 1960s, those were high definition?
Yeah, because the photography, if you were to convert it to modern day pixels and lines, you'd get like at least 4K, very, very high definition.
Wow.
35. It was special Hasselblad 70 millimeter film that was it was actually slide film that was built specifically, designed specifically for the space program. And as soon as the Apollo program was done, they burned all the specs, burned the labs, and destroyed all the equipment. So that film could never be made again.
It's very interesting, I think, that the machine that they took extremely good care of, that was the only machine that could play back those images and videos for the 40th anniversary, just went missing.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. Yep. So the brief history of the solar system. Okay, yeah. I'm going to give it to you as quick as I can. This clump of stuff starts to collect other clumps of stuff, and then it starts to spin, and then it starts to suck up more and more of the interstellar nebula.
Now, we're not talking accretion.
No, this is just the sun, and then it gets so big that it eventually collapses and explodes into a sun and starts continually sucking more and more stuff. And then it gets so big and massive and starts to spin so much because of all this energy it's got from all these, fist-sized clumps of rock traveling 40,000 miles an hour from the explosion of the supernova that created the nebula. All that momentum gets built up until it starts to oblate. It starts to flatten and bulge at the center. And then it spukes out a planet. It pukes out a planet. Then it pukes out another one, and it pukes out another one. And that's why when you look at other solar systems, they have these hot Jupiters, right? These big, massive planets that are like within, a couple of thousand miles of their parent star, because that's just been puked out by that particular sun. And then they puke off their little moons, and then everything cools down, and the outer planets are gas giants with rocky moons, and the inner planets are rocky terrestrial planets with rocky moons. And you should get a couple of super Earths somewhere in the middle where we no longer have Planet V, Maldek, and Phaeton, or whatever. I don't remember what I called them. That, folks, is the brief history of the solar system. That's why everything is in the plane of the ecliptic, except for Pluto, which is an escape moon of Neptune because of whatever came through and smacked Uranus and knocked it over on its side. So it's spinning sideways instead of vertically. And I think that just about puts it all together. So that's that, which may have been the famous Nibiru. May have been Nibiru. What if Nibiru only came through once and knocked Uranus on its ass, knocked it sideways, screwed everything up, tossed a bunch of asteroids to the inner solar system, wiped out the dinosaurs? You look at Venus. There's this gigantic. If you look at the radar images of Venus, they took the Soviets radared the whole thing. And there's this massive gash about a third of the way around the planet, like something hit it at an angle and carved out a whole bunch of the planet, vaporized the atmosphere, which is why you've got these incredibly thick clouds, and all the sulfur and underneath, stuff all burned and created this uninhabitable hell. What if Venus used to be a nice place? Used to be a nice place, just like Earth.
I've even heard people mention, that everything they tell us about Venus isn't true, and that it's actually completely inhabited and has an atmosphere and all that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know. From the pictures, it sure looks like there's a lot of clouds there, if you can trust those pictures. But I've also heard people tell me, well, that's Venus in the fifth dimension. It's a garden spot. I'm like, well, we're not in the fifth dimension. We're still living in the third dimension.
Yeah, we have to ascend first.
Well, ascension. Yeah, ascension where there's no sex and you don't have to consume food.
Right.
Now, Doomcock, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I want to live in a dimension where I can't get a steak and a blowjob.
I 100%. It just doesn't seem like a great great deal to me, but
No.
maybe there are higher compensations in some way.
I knew. Yeah, I hope so. I knew you of all people would appreciate that joke.
No, that is absolutely true.
I don't get to tell that at conferences very often. They get mad at me. I don't know why they get mad at me when I say that.
You should, Mike. You should tell that more often at a conference.
But I hear these guys, and I'm not going to mention any names, David Wilcock, talking about ascension and all this stuff, and I'm like,
Sean David Morton.
Well, Sean, I know very well. We have a long history, Sean and I, and it's not going to end well, sadly.
I have a history with Sean, but it's not long. It's just ended badly.
Yeah, it usually does. But again, I'm thinking, do I want to live in a dimension where I can't get a steak and a BJ?
No, I don't want to. No,
I don't want to. I like it here where I can complain on the internet about bad Star Trek and stuff like that. And have
blowjobs are central to toxic masculinity.
Should have done this on a Tuesday. They are. All right, let's get back to the subject, folks. There may be network people watching me. Well,
another question.
We'd really like to make this show better. You think we could hire Bara? No, not if he's going to say that.
Yeah.
There goes that job right out.
Well, Star Trek Picard will hire anybody, so it might as well.
Was about the various spacecraft that got to Mars that did and didn't work. The squabble at the heart of the argument between the parties involved at JPL, NASA, etc., who they were, what they contributed for, against, etc.
Well, the thing about getting to Mars is there's a lot of disappearances of spacecraft that went to Mars. One of which I think is really mysterious, which I'll talk about. I think I talk about this in the book, which is Mars Observer, which had a camera good enough to definitively tell us whether or not the face on Mars and the structures around it were real or artificial. And the interesting story about that is that the head of the Mars Observer program debated my co-author, Richard C. Hoagland, on a program called Good Morning America in the late 90s, 97, 98, I think, which, or not, might have been 93. Sorry, it was 93, which was a really big show at that time. And basically, they sent this guy out there. He was the deputy director of the program to debate Hoagland, and Hoagland wiped him out. And at the end of it, the host goes, well, if you're so sure that this is nothing, why don't you just take the damn pictures and prove these guys wrong? And the NASA guy said, oh, I got to go. And literally 3 minutes after they went off the air, they announced that Mars Observer had been lost 24 hours before. They couldn't contact it anymore. So the guy knew that the whole time he was debating Hoagland. He knew that their Mars Observer was gone. If he had just said, we can't contact the probe, we don't know what's going on, that would have been but they wanted to see if he could spin it. So that to me proved that it was political and that they probably took it dark. And that's how they knew when they did get there 5 years later with Mars Global Surveyor, what time of the day to take the pictures, what time of the day to make it, what angles to take it from to make it look like it wasn't an artificial structure. And I think that's exactly what they did. Some of these other probes, Mars is a long ways away. I mean, when we first tried to go to the moon, first time we tried to go to the moon, we launched our probe up there, Ranger, right? And it's like shooting a gun, okay? You shoot the gun, you're in the vacuum of space, you know exactly how fast your bullet is going to go, and you know exactly where the moon, which is 2,160 miles across, is going to be in 2.5 days when you get there. And the first time we tried to do that, we missed the moon by 38,000 miles. 18 times the diameter.
Oops.
Okay. And that all has to do with the fact that there were spinning systems, gyros, and they gated in more hyperdimensional energy. And until von Braun figured that out, they couldn't hit the moon. It's like, if you can't hit the freaking moon, how are you going to get to Mars? And it is pretty amazing that the Mariner probe in 1964 got to Mars. It's really long. It's an arduous journey. And I think a lot of the stuff is just screw ups. Although I don't believe for a minute that NASA on one of them they claim they forgot to, there's Amaranth on my wall. They claim that they forgot to, I got to keep my eyes down, guys. They forgot to convert metric measurements to imperial system. And so they lost.
Right.
Mars.
Right.
Sure.
And And what about the Phobos, the Russian Phobos probe that
Right.
lived long enough to take the photograph?
Well, I went through the Russian thing I think it's in Ancient Aliens on Mars. I think Phobos 2 is in there. Phobos 2? Phobos 3?
Phobos 2, yeah.
Phobos 2. And
why do you think I asked you the question?
I know
it's in the book.
It's in the book. I had a Russian guy send me all of the original images from the Phobos image, and they all have that. A bunch of them have that artifact on it. I think it's a camera artifact.
I see. Okay.
People think it's a UFO. I'm like,
it's not the galactic ghoul.
No, but again, if like I said earlier, the lights are still on, there could be defensive systems on there too. It's like, why don't they land at Cydonia? They could land at Cydonia, and basically everywhere else they land and send rovers out, there's all kinds of mechanical equipment all over the place, and it's like, oh well, we don't know what that is. Don't look there. Don't look over there. So they could do that at Cydonia too, but they don't. And I suspect the reason is maybe there's actually active defenses still there. So I don't know. It'd be interesting
I know that in our first episode, when the four of us were here, we talked about the moon, and in your honor, I have my Earth's moon poster up there. But right. One question I've been meaning to ask you is, how did the astronauts not hit any of those glass things on their way down to the surface? Did they know where they were going?
They had a pretty good idea where this stuff was.
Because of the
tranquility was the middle of nowhere, and the purpose of Apollo 11 was to do a couple things: land and get back. That was the first thing. The second thing was to consecrate it as a Masonic temple on the moon. To consecrate the moon and Tranquility Base as a Masonic temple. So they landed literally in the middle of nowhere, and they waited until the stars, Sirius and Orion's Belt, Isis and Osiris, and the ancient Egyptian religion were at the right altitudes above the landing site, 19.5 degrees, 33 degrees, so Buzz could perform his Masonic ceremony with his Masonic ceremonial apron that he took to the moon, and then came back and returned to the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., Southern jurisdiction, and was made to 33
Which
degrees.
is laid out like a pentagram.
Well, is it? I don't know. I don't know about that part.
It
but
is.
Scotch Rite Freemason, 33 degree, all stuff. So that was the purpose of Apollo 11. But here's the interesting thing. Remember the story, if you guys ever watch Apollo 11 stuff, there's a story about the alarm, right? Whoa, there's this alarm that went off, and we almost had to abort the mission, and the alarm went off. Well, it was a 1202 alarm. Do you know that story, Doomcock? You ever heard that one?
No, I'm not sure about that one.
Okay, so as they were descending, and I remember as a little kid, not that I was alive in 1969, but I remember as a little kid listening, and they were like, alarm, 1202, 1202. Turns out 1202 was a computer alarm on the very, very unsophisticated computer system.
Yeah, there were so many things going on. It couldn't function.
That basically said, I'm overwhelmed. I can't function. There's too much data coming in. I can't handle it. Okay, out of memory. So they rebooted it a couple times. What they don't tell you is why the 1202 alarm went off. It went off because when the lunar module had two radars. It had a landing radar, which pointed down, and it had a docking radar, which pointed up and to the side. Buzz Aldrin turned them both on. There's no need to have the docking radar on when you're landing and descending to the lunar surface.
Do you mean Neil Armstrong?
No, I mean Buzz, because Buzz was in control of those operations. Technically, Buzz is the lunar module pilot, although Neil was the pilot.
He was the landing pilot.
It's weird. The terminology is weird. But he turned them both on, which overwhelmed the computer, because in his simulations, you only turned on the landing radar.
Right.
And Buzz didn't know that, but he did that because he wanted to make sure they didn't splatter like a bug on a windshield on any of this glass stuff.
I mean, and it's they did have to get over this really huge boulder field, and they only had 15 seconds of fuel left.
The really huge boulder field, they rolled over.
Yeah.
And supposedly there's this field of boulders, right? There's only one problem. On all the reconnaissance photographs of the area, there's no boulders.
There's no boulders.
There's even a report where this one guy like points to a little dot, and he puts his boulder? Question mark. He writes on the picture, like there were no boulders, so that was a lie. What the problem was is that they weren't far enough downrange for them to have the stellar alignments correct. Sirius at 19.5 or 33 degrees above the landing site when Buzz performed his communion / Osirian Egyptian Masonic ceremony. That's what was important, and that's why they.
Maybe there's a little Jewish in there. We don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jewish. I mean, the Hiram Key is the name of the book that talks about the Masonic origins of, the Egyptian origins of Freemasonry. So
yeah, the ancient mystery schools. Absolutely.
So there was that, and then Apollo 12 is interesting because what they did is with Apollo 12, they landed in the same spot as Surveyor 2. That they had put there 33 months before, so they already knew if they followed that exact path, they wouldn't
hit anything. Yeah.
They started investigating the ruins on Apollo 12. Apollo 11 was just land, perform the ceremony, consecrated as a Masonic temple. And when I say Masonic, I mean also the SS was involved and the magicians and all of the weirdos that were in NASA at that time. And get back.
Doomcock, can you do a very quick rendition of where they come down for us?
Do a rendition of when they come down?
Yeah, the Yahtzee, Nazi schmatzi.
Oh, yes. Once it's as where they come down. That's not my department, says Werner von Braun.
I love that.
It is classic. Hoagland is the guy who found the picture of von Braun in his SS uniform with Himmler stepping right in front of him when they took the picture.
And in Project Paperclip, Operation Paperclip, all they did with Werner von Braun is they put a line in there. They redacted one word. It said he is an ardent Nazi. They redacted ardent and moved him in.
Because the executive order said no ardent.
Because he used Jewish slave labor at Peenemünde for fuck's sake.
He did, and he was good friends with Himmler.
Well, yeah, all those guys.
Was his buddy. So, yeah, that's all true. And then there's like Apollo 12. The other thing too is that they landed amongst this, and also remember they were only allowed to take this terrible, crappy black and white TV camera on Apollo 11. That's why Apollo 11 looks so awful. The video looks so awful, right? But they had a really good higher resolution color camera that they were literally ordered to leave in the command module in orbit above Apollo 11. On Apollo 12, they brought the color camera with them because everybody was complaining, why can't we have color TV pictures from the moon? We now know that when they landed, they did what's called a stand-up EVA, where the astronauts, this is all done in secret. There's an 18-minute or 19-minute gap in the radio transmissions where they popped open the upper hatch and stood on top of the ascent stage engine cowling and looked around. And they came back and said, well, there was a sort of close, all this kind of bullshit stuff.
I didn't know Sylvester Stallone was on board.
And then Al Bean, after Pete Conrad went out, there's again, it's this color camera, but it's attached to the lunar module and it's kind of pointing at the landing gear, and that's about it. You can't really see much. And Al Bean was supposed to go over and take the camera off of the platform and put it on a tripod so that you could see the whole landing site and everything, right? And what he did was the one thing he'd been trained not to do. He took it and he pointed it right at the sun and burned the optics out. So there's only about 40 minutes of TV footage from Apollo 12, because I'll tell you what, when they stuck their heads out the roof and started looking around at all this glass crystalline structure everywhere, they said, shit, we can't put this on TV. And then they did other tricks later on. So sorry, we got off the subject to the moon, but I just wanted to answer that.
And, while we're on the moon, so to speak, and we have maybe 10 minutes to talk about it, I'm curious about the whole thing about, they did take photos of large areas of nothing, and when you turn up the gain, you can see the blue, shard really high in the sky. Can you talk about that?
Well, just that what Hoagland did with a lot of images that he got from Ken Johnston, who kept all of his first generation. Yeah, there's tons of the moon is very colorful because this glass stuff, James, it bounces light all over the place, so you get pink and purple and red and green and
refraction.
Yeah, all this light bouncing around. And Al Bean, who when he came back became an artist, painted his self-portrait on the moon. It was gray and he didn't like it, so he painted it and kept redoing it until he had all these pinks and purples and all these bright colors.
Wow.
So there's, again, if you take the images and just turn up the saturation, you see that the moon has got all this color on it, right? It's bright and beautiful. What the hell was the question? So yeah, what they did is Hoagland,
the spire, the castle,
they overexposed the background,
mm-hmm.
which, you know, they didn't think you'd ever be able to do with computers when they took all these pictures in the 60s. And you see all this structure, all this stuff that has all this engineering in it that I look at and I go, yeah, that's something. That's structure.
Do you have an opinion quickly, briefly about Apollo 18? Do you think it's bullshit?
Well, yeah, that's the footage of
with the woman and
yeah. Actually, I did that for my book. I think I did that for my book, Hidden Agenda, NASA and the Secret Space Program. I don't think it was in the JFK thing. It might be in the JFK book, which is my favorite. Next time we got to talk about JFK.
We're gonna have to get you back for JFK.
But I might even give you a discount on that one. But
cool.
That was a French artist who was into 3D sculpture and did a wonderful job. So that's been pretty well established.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun, you know.
A fun little hoax.
It is a little hoax. It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's a piece of art, you know. And it's like, it's amazing because what he did is he just literally took photographs of the lunar module control panels and, you know, printed them out and put them on cardboard and built the entire interior of the lunar module. It's actually quite a, you know, as a model builder, guys, or hopefully soon to be again a model builder. I was pretty impressed with that skill set. I'll just tell you that.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess being the geek of the week, I should probably share. I have to be careful.
There we go.
Doesn't that sound great? The original laser sound.
Fantastic.
So that,
Yep.
yeah, we like that.
The communicator.
Right here, Captain. Scotty here, Captain. Enterprise to Mr. Spock.
And of course, just for Doomcock,
The photon torpedo, maybe.
this is my precious baby.
Oh,
Outstanding.
Now check this out.
This is Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise. This is
Yeah.
Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
there you go. That looks nice.
That's a nice one. Is that
It
that
is a
Art
nice one.
Asylum one?
The bridge looks correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bridge is nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Nice.
Although it's in kind of a stupid place if you think about it. It's really easy to shoot. But
Yeah. It is. It's like we're, you know.
now I'm
It's
trying
cool.
to use the communicator
No,
as
it
a
is.
mouse.
It really would be in the middle somewhere as opposed to the top. But hey, you know.
It's got shields and protective fields.
That's
you know.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course it does. Of course it does. Just don't make us think logically.
Remember in
Okay.
Wrath of Khan, they raised protective fields and then they raise the shields, you know, or try to raise the shields. So it's two different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Well, in motion picture, it became,
Exactly.
and the energized defense field.
Oh, you mean where Nomad has gone before?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's so pathetic. It's exactly. It's when you watch the Changeling, it's like this is literally exactly the same story.
But better.
But yeah, they had defense fields and shields. Like which? And then Star Trek 2, I hated energizers. We have energizers. Wait a minute, don't you have a matter-antimatter reactor? You don't have an energizer. You have a reactor. But
Well, they
don't
kind of made things up as they went along, and
Yeah.
that became canon.
we
you
got
know?
stuck with
But
it.
Yeah.
Okay, one more thing. Can I do one more share and show
Yes,
you guys
please.
Vatican City on Mars? Okay, 'cause
Sure.
Absolutely.
This is not a 65-foot tall air guitar playing cat on Mars. This is something more interesting.
Wow, meow.
Okay, So
Meow, 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 meow.
Meow, 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 meow.
okay. This was discovered by a guy named Neville Thompson, who does fantastic work. And this guy Scott Waring actually put out Neville Thompson's work, but he was going through images, as he does, of Mars. And you look at this, and this is a Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter image, so it's massive in size. And you look at it, and you're like, okay, whatever. It's just a bunch of nothing, right? A bunch of dirt.
Right.
But you look in on this one area that's in the little green square there. Let me see. If I go to full screen mode, can you guys
Go ahead,
see
yeah.
it?
Knock yourself out.
All right, now I'm going to advance it one more frame. Can you see the new frame?
Not yet.
No?
No,
No.
I'm not seeing it.
You gotta go down one.
All right, well. All right, okay, so that's not going to work.
So much for full screen.
Yeah, so much for full screen.
I've got you as full screen as I can, Captain.
Right. You zoom up on it. We're 2 settings below that, Captain. You zoom up on it, and then you begin to see that there's some pattern, right? There's these block things.
That's real?
And then there's these straight lines. Look at these straight lines.
Holy
looks
shit.
almost- It
90
looks almost
degrees.
glaciatic.
And there's
That is astonishing.
a
Looks like
lake.
a big glacier rolled over it.
And there's some stuff over there. Well, you can say that about anything. And as you get closer, you begin to see even more.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Look at all those
These-
squares.
These
Yes.
blocks, these blocks are above ground. These are the foundations. This is the base.
Big time, right where you are right there. That's like ruined Temple City.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's
Wow.
why I call it Vatican City.
Yeah.
And you begin to zoom in on this stuff even more, and it gets
Oh my
even
God.
more extraordinary.
Wow.
Now that I think is like a dome. And
Yeah.
see all this? This is just all structure. This is all foundations of buildings.
Mike, when can we get you back?
That
That is
Honestly,
incredible.
Anytime, guys.
Holy
Anytime.
shit. Look at that.
Only if you have
Wow.
okay. So
Looks like
and
a Capitol dome.
yeah, not everybody can see this stuff, but then there's
And-
other
and
areas over here to the left.
NASA actually paints this stuff out, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. This area over here, take a look at that. That
Never a straight answer.
Oh my God.
again, all structural, all 90 degrees. This looks like wires and things. I don't know exactly what this is, but these are these blocks. These are like buried in mud and silt and stuff. And it just reminded me, the whole area reminded me of Vatican City, right?
Yeah.
Dome and all these buildings around it. And let me see if I can turn that black.
Now, Mike, while you're showing us this, what do you say to the people that say, "Oh, that's just pareidolia"?
Well, I have an answer for that. And here's another close-up. So here's
Good
Vatican
heavens.
City with the dome. Here's the dome on Mars.
Wow.
Here they
We
are.
got
together.
Catholics on the moon already.
Catholics on Mars. Catholics on Mars.
Oh my
Catholics on
God.
Mars. That's even worse.
Look at that. Come on, man. That's art. That's artificial. Come on.
Totally.
All artificial.
Totally.
Bullshit.
There's no way that could happen naturally.
Naturally. No.
Yeah.
All right. So
Wow.
pareidolia. There's an article on my blog, mikebara.blogspot.com, which I just have because I don't have time to manage an actual website, right? Blogger's got everything I need still.
That's what your intern is for, right?
Yeah, well, I need an intern. I need an intern, ladies. Preferably between 20 and 30. Pareidolia is about seeing faces and figures where there are none. Straight lines are straight lines. There's no such thing as pareidolia. Pareidolia is a fake term that was invented by a Skeptical Inquirer magazine editor in 1994.
No shit.
Taken from one mention in a scholarly article from the 1800s. There's
Wow.
one. The word is used one. So was it not used between the late 1800s and 1994? And now it's become, oh, well, you see patterns where there are none.
Mhm.
Basically, it's an excuse, and they make it sound like it's some sort of real condition that people have. Now, there is a condition called prosopagnosia, which is the inability to recognize faces. Okay.
It's face blindness. Yeah.
And only like 0.5% of the population has prosospagnosia.
Mm-hmm.
The weird thing is, guys, is that literally all of those people work at NASA. Can you believe that? They all work at NASA that have that problem.
Right next to the room with the woman with the airbrush that has to airbrush all that out.
Again, at the time this debate was raging in 2013, I went and looked up. There's places you can look up medical papers, and I went to the medical papers and I typed in pareidolia, and there were no results. So there's no scholarly. It's just a scholarly sounding term. Now there's been some since then, because now they're trying to make pareidolia into something which it isn't. But here's the difference. Prosospagnosia, or whatever it's called, you can identify exactly what parts of the brain are affected, exactly how they're affected. It's mapped and all that stuff. Pareidolia, there's none of that. You know why? Because it doesn't exist. Because it's a made up, fake, academic sounding term that people like Phil Plait can use to try to explain away stuff like this, which is undeniably artificial. There's no rational person who would look at that Vatican City that Neville Thompson discovered and say, oh, well, that's just you seeing things. No, that's a city on Mars. That's what that is. All right,
a city on the edge of forever.
Right, exactly.
So to speak. Okay, well, it's amazing how fast 2 hours just goes by. I wanted to ask Gary Ambrosia, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to put to Mike?
Yeah, no, Gary, you don't really push me too hard.
I'm good to go, man. I like listening to you, and I even more so, I like observing you. So I'm watching you, pal.
Take that how you will.
I really I enjoyed this. I enjoyed your books, Mike, and you're a great guy. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. So I'm good.
A lot of fun just to hang out with.
Oh yeah.
I wrote these books. Well, mostly I wrote these books so that I could have a sex life. But I wrote these books. For guys like you who are genuinely curious, who want to know these things, and so that you could have some place to go where you wouldn't get all the outside bullshit. You would actually just get the information as it happened, chronologically as things went, and know that we're not insane for thinking some of the things we think.
Yeah, it's important.
Doomcock, Overlord DVD, the future ruler of Earth.
Yes.
Do you have anything that you wanted to put to Mike?
I just wonder why no one else has spilled the beans about the crystalline structures, the spire, the citadel, the pyramids on Mars. I mean, China is sending material out there. Why not embarrass the West and expose the fraud? And then have a communist, triumph as, oh, well, we're the ones who are telling the truth. And look how the capitalist West has lied to you all these years.
It's a good question.
Why not?
Putin may do that soon, but Putin's a capitalist, not a communist.
Yeah.
Well, they did land on the backside of the moon, and they sent back pictures, and the pictures showed these glass structures in the sky. And again, falling off with the light exactly the way they would and only could do if they were really there on the lunar surface. So they gave us the data.
Did they post them online?
Yes, but they didn't say what they were. So that's the thing you're looking for, is you're looking for the disclosure part, Doomcock.
Right.
And I wish they would do that too. It would put me, well, I'd probably be on CNN for once. But it would push this into another.
You'd
cycle.
Be a mega best-selling author.
But yeah, well, you have to understand. Okay, my daily show that I do, which is not typically about aliens and stuff, I believe that there is a global alliance behind the scenes that is working to change this planet. I really do think that, and for the better. I believe ultimately there are a lot of bad people on this planet, but there are also some good people. And they're going to eventually tell us this stuff. It's just not time yet. I mean, I'm trying to do this without getting political at all. How can I do this?
Thank you.
It's hard.
There are people who think that the pharmaceutical companies have their best interests in mind. and would never push a medicine on them that didn't work in order to make money. There are people who think that. So there are people who actually believe that. So how do you go from there if you can't even get people to understand that? And that's as apolitical as I could get.
Yeah.
If you can't even get people to understand that, how the hell are you going to spring aliens on them?
Yeah.
And if you look at the Brookings report, which says,
now
don't push this too
I
fast.
think the Brookings report is full of shit, and I'll tell you why. Because they based it on that 1938 War of the Worlds with Orson Welles thing, which scared the shit out of people because they started on a channel watching a famous singer, and then they went over to the channel where the Mercury Theater Company were doing their War of the Worlds dramatization, and they missed the part at the beginning that said "Happy Halloween." This is our Halloween dramatic reading of the War of the Worlds. Well, and it's not fair. It's like apples and oranges.
Yeah, it was a setup from the beginning. I think you're right, but that's what I'm saying is aliens are 5 years from now. I mean,
the aliens were 5 years from now, 25 years ago, right, man.
But what I'm saying, Gil, is that I think there's going to be a lot of revelations, probably a lot of them this year. There's a lot happening right now. Look at the Twitter files right now. I'm not going to comment on what they are, but look at the so-called Twitter files, which is telling you the truth about what's been going on in the last few years. Aliens are way down the road, but I think at least 5 years down the road before we get to that. So,
well, we'll have to have you back this year several times.
Yeah, let's do a show. Let's do like the aliens and pop culture thing, because that'll be more up Doomcock's alley too, because I want to talk about the War of the Worlds presentation, and I want to talk about how Rosemary's Baby is an exact recreation of the so-called Babylon working with Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard in Pasadena just reset in New York, and how John Cassavetes is the spitting image of Jack Parsons, the founder of JPL.
We're going to have Walter Bosley on that show.
Yeah, and Walter Bosley. And the Face on Mars comic book. We didn't even get to the Face on Mars comic book tonight, which tells you the whole story. It tells you that the aliens, the Anunnaki, the giants came from Mars. And the people that created that comic book were connected to Jack Kirby, who had NASA connections. So where did he get the story? And that would be a great show, I think.
Okay, so we'll do some more shows. We'll do some shows. We'll do some shows. For right now, I need to go ahead and get a mod to come on so we can spin the wheel and give away these awesome books of yours. So we have to chant together. Mod.
Yeah, we'll do the starter car chant from Dune.
Mod.
Then there's Mod.
And ladies and gentlemen, may I please introduce the one, the only Canadian Spider-Man.
Hey.
Hail, Canadian Spider-Man.
Hail.
Hey.
Gary, good to see you.
Hail, Führer.
Mike.
Hail.
You're going to have to speak up. We can barely hear you.
Okay, working on it. There we go.
Better.
How's
Better.
that?
Nice shirt.
You like that?
Yeah, that's very nice. That's cool looking. And thanks to Fet for Hire.
Yeah.
The one, the only.
Yep. What a fantastic show.
PJ Bear says, have Dark Mission need another Bara book.
Here you go, buddy.
Okay. So Herc 130 says, bring the Wheel of Gil.
Yeah, we've got it right here. I will share that with you right now. And I'm not sure if the whole panel realizes, but we've broken every record. As far as
this is the biggest show we've ever had.
Yes,
Cool.
it is. Thank you all. Doomcock, thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you,
You bet.
Doomcock, Gary,
Doomcock.
Mike, Canadian Spider-Man, me, everyone in the chat. Now let's get this wheel going and give away some prizes.
Right here. And this is Jill, antiderivative Jill is responsible for this.
Antiderivative Jill.
There you go, sir.
Now this always makes me nauseous because when I see my head spin around, it's like The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go ahead and give it a
Magic
spin.
Mat.
Now this is going
right.
to be for Ancient Aliens on Mars 1.
We're doing 2 spins.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, engage.
Engage.
Oh,
Pleasant Valley Picker, CA.
All right.
Congratulations.
All right.
nice. Awesome.
We didn't have any sound.
Certainly did have sound. No, everything's
I
up and
didn't.
running.
I heard it.
I'll give you some
Usually
sound.
there's confetti and stuff.
There we go.
Congratulations.
Hold on,
Okay. So Pleasant Valley Picker, CA, and the next winner, make sure that you send me an email at this address so that I can send your details, contact information to Mike.
There we go.
That's how we do this. Congrats.
Fantastic. He doesn't actually, Pleasant Valley Picker doesn't live far from me in Canada. So nice.
Which means I will pick up the shipping. All right. Let's take his name off of there and spin it again.
Done. All right.
Excellent. Engage. Ooh.
Oh, wow.
What does it say?
Oh. Why you hating?
Why you John? Yay!
Why you hating?
Well done.
All right.
Why you hot
Awesome.
Why Utah? Congratulations.
Fantastic.
All hail the wheel.
Hail the
All
wheel.
right. So the same instructions. Send me your contact information to gil@sunflower.com. I will forward them to Mike, and he will send you an autographed copy of Ancient Aliens on Mars.
Sorry. That's a mistake. Trying to nope, that doesn't count. Sorry, Gap. Nope.
Yeah,
So-
and any way you'd like me to personalize them or something, I'd be glad to, and put them in the mail tomorrow. Actually, one gets one, and the other one gets two, unless
Yeah.
they both want one. Do they both
There
want
we
one?
go.
I think we should do 1 and 2 because the point is they'll have to buy the other one, so you'll
right.
sell books.
That's right. I like the way you think, Cardinal Sin.
Good.
Well
Well, you
done.
know,
Good marketing.
they don't call me Cardinal Sin for nothing.
That's right.
All right, I'll duck out and leave the show to the professionals.
Thank you, Canadian
Hi,
Spider-Man.
Canadian Spider-Man.
Hail,
Thank you.
Canadian Spider-Man.
Hail, Canadian.
Thanks,
Spider-Man.
Doomcock.
Hail.
The Doomcock ring right here.
Hail.
I love you, buddy.
I wear this everywhere, Doomcock.
Thank
Everywhere.
you. I am
So
honored,
many
sir.
Mexicans have asked me about this, and it glows in the dark. I'm right, it does. Right? Thanks
Excellent.
to Gary.
I
Thanks
I
to
happen to
Gary.
have my
Thanks to
Doom.
Gary Ambrosia. Hail,
Cock ring.
Gary Ambrosia.
That is
You guys
all
can
Gary.
thank Bob Lazar for the fact that it glows.
That's right.
Cool.
So
I have my
Okay.
Doom cock ring right here.
Mike,
I was gonna
we could
say that-
listen to you so much. Thank you, Mike, for being
Thanks,
here.
Canadian Spider-Man. That's great.
All right.
I was going to say that kind of reminds me of a scene from the movie Caligula with Malcolm McDowell, but I'm not going to say that.
Great movie. Wasn't that a Bob
Yeah.
Guccione
You know who
Jr.
saw the
movie?
movie by who laughs. When they
Oh,
laugh,
yeah.
you know they saw the movie.
That's a good
Yeah.
Bob
one.
Guccione. That's right.
Bob Guccione, $17 million porno flick. God. And that was
With
when
real
$17 million was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they made Empire for 17 million back at the same time.
Mhm.
17 million.
Yep.
Wow. And Lucas didn't even direct it.
No.
And
Can
why
you even
Tom
get
wants
that
to know
movie
what the
anymore?
email
It's so horrible.
is. So I live in Kansas. My name is Gil. So it's gil@sunflower.com. I was an early adopter.
There you go.
So there you go. And Cam's Crash Courses says congrats. And of course, congrats to all the people in the chat who were here for this awesome show. Mike, I can't thank you enough. This was great. Let's do it again soon.
Anytime.
Doomcock, I can't thank you enough for coming on my channel. And I know that this is stuff that you're actually interested in, but it means so much to me that you're here. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, my friend. Love you, man.
And Gary, despite the fact that I have a a little slight bit of a man crush on you. You are a handsome guy. I want to thank you very much for also being here and kind of being our resident skeptic.
I don't blame you, buddy, and you're welcome.
Doomcock, can you please plug your channel, your shows, and your merch and so forth?
YouTube.com/Overlord DVD. That's my channel. Also, the Harvey Zone. YouTube.com/The Harvey Zone. I'm getting ready to do some different things with the Harvey Zone. So 2023 is going to be the year where I change up things on that channel. And so be sure and subscribe to that. It's pretty much, I got patreon.com/Doomcock, subscribestar.com/Doomcock.
Lots of great Patreon content. I every time there's, another commentary track that comes out, I instantly download it.
Awesome. I'm glad. I'm really glad.
Gary, can you tell us where we can donate to Bunny Mom Ambrosia's charity?
Yes, if you guys go to thebunnytrailrescue.com, you can check out the website. It's my wife's rabbit rescue. Give it a little traffic, and if you're so inclined, maybe throw her a buck or two because the little critter's got to eat. Other than that, check out our show every Wednesday night with Dick Van Doomcock and a whole bunch of other toxic males.
Which
like
I
myself.
was a surprise guest on just 2 weeks ago.
That he was. Check us out Wednesday nights. That would be 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. We are there every Wednesday night to make you laugh, and we talk about things that make you cry, but we make you laugh. So check it out.
True.
Check it out. Also check out Manorama on Thursdays, Thursday nights.
For people that need even more testosterone.
Ooh,
Mike,
yes.
What's the best place for people to find out more about your books and find your stuff online?
Just probably mikebara.blogspot.com. It's just a very basic blog site. I post all my daily show videos there, my Friday night show. I post videos by other people. I post podcasts like alien podcast things. The one I did with in Manchester in October with Richard Doty is on there. And that's really it. And you can find my books on Amazon.com.
I'll tell you something. I don't know if you're interested, but I'll make you this offer right here in front of God and everybody, in front of all 94 people in the chat and the three of us here. If I can get a package deal, what I do is I have a 6-month block that I do with Don Ecker, that I do with Walter Bosley, that I do with Micah Hanks. And if you'd like, we can book you for maybe 4 shows or something like that. And we can all just dig into every one of these topics that we want to and have more time to stretch it out.
Is Hanks on every one of those episodes, or what do you
Micah Hanks is I think every third.
It would be a group
Thursday.
Of all of us, or
no. It's just
you would add me to
I'm
that.
giving you the example that I have a 6-month block where every third Thursday I have Micah Hanks on. Every second Thursday I have Walter Bosley on.
Sure.
So
I'd be interested in doing that. Yeah.
Great.
Sure. As long as I'm not competing with these other studly men here.
That's right.
Right.
Okay. Thanks again so much, everybody. Please subscribe if you're new here and you enjoy the content. I know everybody says that, but it really does help. I'm actually a little personal information. I'm actually appealing for monetization on the 31st. I've done everything that they told me to do. It was vague as hell, but I'm cross your fingers. Hopefully the 31st.
Not after you had me on. Forget it.
Yeah, now we're
not
fucked.
gonna happen now.
But thanks everybody for being here. It was a wonderful show, and I guess it's Cardinal Sin out.